Welcome back to ScholarScoop. I'm Steve Loflin. It's Mental Health Awareness Month, and today's conversation is truly special. It's about second chances, resilience, and how our life experiences can shape a powerful sense of purpose. My guest today, Dwayne Wiggins, is an extraordinary example of what happens when perseverance meets opportunity. After returning to school in his early 30s, Dwayne not only became president of the NSCS chapter at Full Sail University, but also transformed his own journey into a mission dedicated to mental health advocacy, leadership, and mentoring. We talk about why mental health wellness matters at any age, how setting boundaries can save your life, and the profound impact that NSCS has had on his path. Get ready to be inspired. This is ScholarScoop. Hey, Dwayne, thank you so much for jumping in here today for some ScholarScoop. How are you doing?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for having me. This is such an honor to be here.
It's more of an honor to have you here. I really do appreciate you. I was thinking about this when we started the conversation about having this ScholarScoop conversation. I was like thinking back to you were the president of your Full Sail chapter of
Yes,
NSCS, right?
yes,
And then you got involved with the National Leadership Council,
yes.
which is amazing. And we had our conference back in 2019 in Washington. Do you remember all that?
Oh, 100%. What I will say is that it was life changing to be a part of that conference, to be a part of the leadership team, to be the president of the university for Full Sail. I never imagined. I'll say, and that's why I'm really just trying to soak it in. Like for you, when you started to mention all of those things, there's certain components of my life that I'll never forget, and that's one thing that I'll never forget. I think about like my education journey. When I first got out of high school, I had this whole plan of going to college and I was going to do this and do that. And it just didn't pan out that way for me. I didn't go to college right after school. I actually started my education journey later in life, like around in my early 30s, and I'm now 42. And and so it was once I got started, I just couldn't stop. And I remember going to Full Sail and I went to school online and I was thinking to myself, I just want to get a degree and I want to make sure that I have this and I'm doing this for me. It was nothing that anyone pressured me to do. It was something that I wanted to do for me. And the more I got involved in my school and started to learn about NSCS, and I was like, I really want to be a part of this. So thinking about my role in Full Sail was that I started out as just someone that was doing like social media stuff. Then I went to become the events planner. Then I became the president. And so I was the president for all of these students online and on campus. I was going back and forth to Florida, spending a lot of time just really being involved in NSCS, which was really a huge, like a huge, I don't even know the word. Like it really changed my life. And
Mm.
in the most amazing way to be able to be. And I'm going to share this. When I signed up to go to Full Sail and I went down to do a tour, and when I got there, I was signing up. I did the tour. I was going to go do the tour. And there was a bus outside. And all of these students came up. And they were like 17, 18, getting excited about going to college. And I'm in my early 30s. And I looked and I got in my car and left. And
Oh,
I
oh
was like,
no.
I can't do this. I'm like, all of these kids, and it's me. And so they ended up calling me and to come back, and they did a private tour for me, and that just really changed my life. So being a part of NSCS, being the older individual, kind of had me like I had a lot of insight on life. I had experienced it a lot, so I was able to really share. So the more I got involved, the more I started to love it. So then becoming to be a part of the National Leadership Council just allowed me to have a bigger voice and be able to meet so many people. Being in DC at that conference, it was phenomenal. Like and then I think like the pandemic happened like the next year. So because I was really looking forward to the next year.
Yes.
So it was just, and some of the people, we still keep in contact with each other.
I mean, that's what I really love about like NSCS or even just generally when you think about going
Mm-hmm.
to college, like finding your tribe or your organization that you can be a part of. And, NSCS, I do think in a lot of ways, the story that you just told is what I really love to hear because back in the day, back in 1994, when this was getting started, it was really looked at like we're traditional first and second year students. And what's been amazing over the past 31 years since it started is that there's so many more ways now to bring so many more types of students into the organization, because just like you, everybody's life experience isn't on the same track. And
Absolutely.
I think we're in a world now that's starting to appreciate that and to actually look at it like you're not at any disadvantage if you decide to wait a little bit before you go to college, or you think about coming back to college a long time after you've been out of the game, because
Hmm.
it's just so much more, I think, conducive and so many more opportunities. And I think it's brave of you to, first of all, come back, because I'm glad they called you and that you
Yeah,
came back. That was bravery right
absolutely.
there. That was a lot of bravery.
Absolutely.
And then to join NSCS and then to take on a leadership role and then become president, I just think it's like it says a lot about you. And I know what I've heard you say this, and I think I read this somewhere about you, where you say like your life experiences have kind of informed your passions and the things that you feel like you're good at. And I
Absolutely.
look at like this, like it makes me feel really good to think that NSCS was some small part of your life story when you've got so many incredible things going on. But how do you define yourself, or how do you describe that to people when you say my life experiences have, fueled my passions? Like, what are the life experiences and what now are your passions because of that? I'm really curious.
I think that there's so many, and I think that when I really focus on my foundational passion about life is really to see people thrive. Like that is my mission in life, is to really see people thrive. So I think about the life experiences that I have, and I'll just share a couple. I won't go into detail because we'll be here all day. But I think about the being raised in a single parent household, being the eldest of five. I think about the struggle that we had growing up, and I made a vow to myself that to always appreciate life, because going through those things, I know what it's like to not have. So it's like I'm grateful for the things that come into my life. So that's one thing that I'm able to talk to people about, teaching them to be grateful for the things in life, because you can have things one day and the next day you can't, you won't have anything. Um, I know what it's like to be hungry, physically and mentally and spiritually, and to feel empty. I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to be maybe not the smartest person in the room or questioning your abilities to even do it. I think about, even coming back to school, like, or starting to go to college. I thought to myself, maybe I'm not smart enough. Like, maybe I don't deserve a degree. Most people in my family, they went to work at a factory, and I'm not knocking a factory job, but they went to work at the factory and that's where they retire from. So I know what it's like to be stagnant. Um, some of the struggles is that I know what to not love yourself and to doubt yourself and your abilities and your capabilities, and all of that. When I had made the conscious decision that I did not want to be any of those things, was that it was very important for me to really just have a positive outlook on life, period.
Hmm.
um
Yep.
so with that, I made it my life mission to really encourage people that you can do it, whatever it is. Like, you can thrive, you can be great. But and even in those moments where you begin to doubt yourself or maybe even question yourself, it's okay to feel those things, but not to stay in those things. Like, have your moments. I talk about, like, even in, like, dealing with, like, mental health issues. When I think about, like, being angry or being feeling disappointed about something, or feeling like you can't succeed or whatever, we are entitled to feel all of those feelings, but it's what we do with those feelings to be able to allow us to move forward. And I think it's important to feel those things so that we'll be able to appreciate when we thrive above all of those things that we feel. So it's been very important for me in my life's mission to take everything that I've ever been through in life, um, good, bad, or what people may feel I shouldn't have survived from, or whatever the case may be, to really realize that I've survived 100% of the days of my life. And
Hmm.
that even with the things that I've been through, that I've been able to turn those things around. And so it's important for me to really encourage people that regardless of what it may look like right now, there's something on the other side of that, and you can make it as well.
I know when people hear that, it's first of all, it's inspiring just to hear you tell the story and to see what you've accomplished. But I think you're exactly right. When it comes to thriving, so many people have a tendency to believe the self-doubt
Hmm.
in their head than they are to believe their capabilities to go and do whatever it is that they put their mind to.
Yeah.
And so I think the importance of all these stories and telling that story is just a good reminder. Here I am, and look what I've done and what I've accomplished. You can do that too. But also just think about how you're managing your thoughts and how you're actually thinking through the things you want to do to get to the place that you want to get to. So,
Yeah.
so I think that's really incredible. And do you like mostly engage yourself now with high school students, or like who's your audience that you really feel like are the ones that are who need to hear it now? Like, who's that for you?
You know, the truth of the matter, I actually work in a high school presently. However, what I realize is that the people that need to hear this kind of speech now or this motivation now are adults. I
Mm,
spend a lot of time at different conferences, going to different organizations, doing workshops, really helping people focus on their mental health and their well-being. I recently released my freshman book, I'll say,
yeah, I
called
know.
Are You Okay? And it's a mental health and well-being conversation and check-in. And the importance of that is that, yes, I realize that within the schools, working in high schools, working with students, that a lot of times they deal with a lot of mental health things as well. But what I've also realized is that we live in a world now, from in my personal opinion, and I'm sure there's some data that can support this because I just know it to be true, is that children nowadays are a little bit more vocal than kids were like in our age group, like the age group that we're in now.
Hmm.
When we were kids, we were not as vocal. I know for me, there were certain things that was said to me that kind of transition into my adulthood was just what happens in this house stays in this house. So we don't talk, like if we're going through things, we don't talk about it, or we're
Hmm.
too afraid to share. Or even as adults right now, we're not vulnerable because we view vulnerability as a weakness, when the truth of the matter is it is a strength to be able to say, this is how I feel, I need to work through this, or get the help and support that I need to be able to work through this. So I think that a lot of times that as adults, I'll say maybe 30 and up, maybe 25 and up or whatever, I think that a lot of times that it's been so implanted in our brain to not express our feelings. Men don't cry.
Hmm.
Women don't get listened to. There's race involved. There's all of these things that really have made us stagnant and being able to express how we feel or to share our experiences, that we just kind of sit back and deal with the hurt, the pain that has been taunting us for years because we're too afraid to be vulnerable or to share. And my encouragement to those adults is that when you work, especially to those that work in education, right? That I always tell them, I grew up in like listening to my mom saying like, my kids come first, my kids come first. And I'm like, and that was my mindset when even our motto here at the school is kids first. Although I agree with that to a certain extent, but however, what I've started to realize that when we get teachers that are burnt out, if they're not, because they're not putting themselves first, that they're no good to the students. I'm not saying that they're not teaching, but students can tell, they can tell a shift within your attitude, right?
Hmm.
So when you're not good as an educator, or when you're not good as an adult, how can you be good for someone else? So what I'm really encouraging everybody is to put yourself first. You know, before you try to put anybody else before you, make sure that your mental health is good. Make sure your well-being is okay. Make sure that you're resting. Make sure that you are pouring back into yourself everything that you're pouring out. Because if you're not good for yourself, you can't be good to anybody else, regardless of how well we think we are masking it or trying to do it. The truth of the matter, we're not doing a good job.
No, that's like definitely 100% accurate. And I like this concept that keeps coming up more and more in conversations about reverse mentoring, right?
Yes.
Where you have like most of the time you think, I'm a college student, I'm a high school student, maybe a young alumni. I need a mentor that can teach me the ways of the world and how things are
Mhm.
going to work for a career or to get something that you want to accomplish. And then you think about it, the person asking for the mentor, they have a lot of experience too. And oftentimes their experience is much more relevant to what's happening day to day in life, right?
Yes.
And I think the point that you mentioned a minute ago made me think about this, where a lot of younger people are much better at sharing their feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like, how do you teach them how to mentor their family members or others in a productive way so they can help them feel more comfortable sharing? Or because I think my family would have been a lot like yours. If you start talking much about your feelings, it's sort of like, type it down, you don't want to talk about that. Let's keep this. So you could easily see where like a student could go home from school and it's like, I don't really want to talk about what I'm feeling. And
Mm-hmm.
if the parents' immediate reactions like, oh, we don't want to talk about that, or we shouldn't talk about that, or whatever they may say, there needs to be a way to combat that so that you can say it's really important that we talk about it. And so thinking through how that can happen more, I think you're good at teaching life skills, I'm sure, and coping, ways to cope with things. And
Mm-hmm.
it seems like this factors into it a little bit, almost as a life skill, right?
Yep, absolutely. I think one of the things that's so fascinating is that what you're saying, like this reverse mentorship. And I think that more and more, like I am encouraging our students here at the school or even kids in my family to just start having conversations and encouraging families as well to everybody put the phones away and everybody come together and we're going to talk or we're going to eat dinner together. And I think that a lot of times that the values that we valued back in the day has left away. It's like everybody's bringing iPads to the dinner table now. And everybody's, when we're going out to dinner, everybody's on their cell phones and nobody's really conversing about whatever. It's like we're going to dinner to eat dinner, but we're not going to spend time as a family. So I think that it's very important to be intentional because a lot of times, although we have a lot of kids too that will speak up and talk, but what tends to happen is that they will adopt what they see happening.
Mm-hmm.
So if
Yep.
mom and dad are not conversing, then we're not going to converse, or if our family is not a family and we don't have the family dynamic where we can freely talk to each other and share our feelings, then it just won't happen. And so what happens is that we begin to have this generational thing that continues. So our great grandmothers didn't talk, so our grandmothers didn't talk. And then our grandmothers didn't talk, so our mom doesn't talk. Now our siblings don't talk. So it's one of those things to really encourage people to just start having conversations because it's very important to really just start thinking about that, how this is going to affect the lineage of the family. And so what tends to happen is that we begin to lose the family value when we don't talk. And then also what happens, then people start looking for answers in different ways. And before you know it, there's alcohol involved, there's drugs, there's all of these different things that they're getting involved in because they're looking for answers. If they just took time to communicate and have family time and value that time, that most times people won't look for answers in all the wrong places.
Well, when I hear that, it makes me think, and I know even how we started this conversation when I said, "How are you doing?"
Uh-huh.
I think you go through life and you're interacting with people a good bit, and you say, "How are you doing? How's it going? What's happening?" And I think that you usually come up with a little pat answer like, "I'm
Mm-hmm.
good," or
Yep,
"Everything's
exactly.
great," or And I think that that's also a little misleading because as you hear a lot of people say, just about every person that you ever encounter is going through something that you know nothing about, right?
Absolutely.
So when you meet people and they're like, I'm fine, I'm great, and it's almost, how do you get beyond that, like superficial, great, fine? Because sometimes you can also imagine if you ask someone how they're doing, and then an hour and a half later, they
Mm-hmm.
finished telling you how they're really doing. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, now what do I do with all that information? When people are sharing that way, what's a good way to kind of, I guess, sort of bring that up? Or how do you address that when someone really asks you how you're doing?
I think what's important, and this is just what I feel, I think what's important is that if you ask someone that question, you just better be ready for what the response is going to be. I
Mm-hmm.
think that if it's like making a conscious decision within ourselves, right? That if I know that I am on a mission to do something, maybe the response is not, how are you doing today? Maybe, hey, I hope you're having a great day. We'd love to catch up with you later. It can be those kind of things. But if I know that I have time, I purposely ask people, "Hey, how are you today? How you doing?" I sometimes I even ask, like, "Are you sure you okay?" Like just checking in. You know, um, And it doesn't necessarily mean that I know something. It's sometimes I just a gut feeling within myself that I may feel like a person may be going through something, or I can see the chaos around them
Mhm.
that may be affecting them. So I think it's important to not only make sure that you are in a headspace to be able to receive the answer that may come with that, are you okay? Um, but also giving the person space to be able to authentically share, what they may be going through. Because a lot of times it is a couple of things. One thing, a lot of people will not share what they're going through. One, I said, because about vulnerability, I share this in the book and I really focus on how vulnerability is a strength. It is powerful to be able to share what you're going through. But a lot of times people will not share because, one, they feel like if I share my business, somebody may go back and talk about it. Or they
Mhm.
feel like I'm the only one that's going through this. Nobody else is going through, so you won't understand what I'm going through. And I think that I always respond to people when they say, oh, I'm okay, or you wouldn't understand, or what. I'm like, try me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Try me, because I
Right.
feel like there's times in life that the majority of, if we just open our mouth and begin to talk and begin to share, 9 times out of 10 you're going to either know someone that went through it, you went through it yourself, or you can relate in a different format to that will still be able to support some advice or input that I may have to share. Or I may just be the one that can listen to you, and by the time you're done explaining or talking, you may have the answer.
Right.
So a
Right.
lot of times I think that to really help people to speak up and to talk is to allow them to have a space where they can do it, where they feel comfortable, and you genuinely want to know. I think out of formality, we've been taught to say, hey, how are you today? I'm good. How are you? I'm good as well. But what about the person that says, you know what, I'm not so well today? Will you provide them the space to share, or are you in a rush to not really hear what they say? So I just think that how we verbalize things could always help us to be able to navigate the response of a person. Like I said, if we know we don't have time to listen to a full speech because we don't know what the response is going to be, just be like, hey, good to see you. Looking forward to catching up with you soon. But if we have the time, hey, how are you today?
I think that's a really good answer to that because I think it's become almost a throwaway phrase, right? You just
Mm-hmm.
say it because it's almost impulsive or just comes right off your tongue without ever seriously seeing it as opening a door for someone to really share. So I do think there's a lot about that I even need to think more carefully and thoughtfully about because it's something that I do pretty often. And I also think so you mentioned that you have written a book, which
Yes.
sounds like it's the first of many. It's your freshman book. So
Yes.
I
Yes.
think that's great. Congratulations.
Thank you
What a
so
big
much.
accomplishment. And you decided to title the book, Are You Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So you're asking the question right there, which is opening a door for a lot of potential answers. And I saw your book is sold out. So I have to think about where can I actually get a copy of your book and now that I
Absolutely.
now that I'm really interested and it's sold out. But with that said, when you say, are you okay? And I know the book presents some ways to actually, I guess, have those coping, how to help people with
Mm-hmm.
the answers to those things. Are there a few of those things that come right to the top that you feel like are really important to address when you ask that question, are you okay?
Absolutely. I think what I'm really trying to transition the conversation, and I know may take years of work, but I'm getting people to instead of saying like, how are you doing, to ask, are you okay? Because I've had an opportunity. So I present a seminar/workshop called Are You Okay? I've had an opportunity to present this workshop all across the United States, about 28 times. And in these seminars, it's about a 2-hour seminar. When I'm asking people, are you okay? What I've come to find is that the majority of the people have verbalized that people have not, they don't know when the last time they've been asked that question. People say, how are you doing? And the response is like, I'm good. But most people don't even know how to respond to, are you okay? Because the truth of the matter, especially in these days and times, a lot of us are not okay. We suffer in silence. So I think what's important when we're thinking about asking people, are they okay, is that we listen. It's important to be an active listener. A lot of times people don't need you to give advice. They don't want a person to share their story, because when we don't listen and when we start to interject like advice or stories, it no longer focuses on the person, because then it starts to shift and turns on us, intentionally or unintentionally. I mean, it's not always, that we mean to do it, but it's just sometimes how we story tell. We share our experiences to try to relate to what the person may be going through. And I've found when people have done that, to where, and I've been guilty of this, to where I thought like, oh, let me share my experiences. And now the person we're no longer focusing on that person. That person is now comforting me. And I'm like, that's not
Mm.
fair. You know,
Right.
I'm checking in on you. And I think another thing to really think about, other than active listening, is just, when we don't know what to say, it's nothing wrong with suggesting like professional help for our friends and family. Because a lot of times professional help, like, it makes people think that, oh, there's something wrong. Like, I got to go see a life coach, or I got to go talk to a therapist. Like, there's something wrong with me mentally. But we're talking about like mental health, not mental illness. We're talking about making sure that we are able to stabilize our mental being, that when we get up in the morning, there's some type of joy in our heart to be waking up. That when we meet with our friends, although life may not be perfect or great, but we can find some good in life. And I think that's very important as well. But the key component to checking in on individuals is not only checking in on them, but making sure that you're checking in on yourself. Because a lot of times with our friends, that when we talk to them and we're listening and we're taking on, we carry sometimes the burden because we love them. We care about them and we want the best for them. But at the same time, we have to be able to really um categorize the capacity that we are able to take on as well, and to be able to express that in a vulnerable state. So it's just like knowing that you can listen, knowing that you can suggest some things to individuals. You don't have to know the answers, you don't have to have all the answers, but you can suggest and recommend people to them that may, but also taking care of yourself in those conversations as well. That's very important.
So when you think about yourself, because you're obviously sharing this with lots and lots of people across the country, and you're almost opening the door, like, I'm
Mhm.
the person that can listen to you and I can actively hear what's going on. How do you do that for yourself so that you're not the person that's becoming the go-to
Mhm.
and you need maybe someone to listen to you sometimes? How does
That
that
is
work for you?
That is a great question, and I get asked that question quite often. One of the things that I am proud to say, and people often say this, like they want this thing that I have, is
Uh,
that I really set boundaries, healthy boundaries. I love to build healthy relationships, but I make sure that there's healthy boundaries. Whenever I go out to speak at these different conferences and different places, and I'm talking about "Are you okay?" and talking about being that person to be the accountability partner with them and support them, for those who may feel like they don't have anyone, I freely give out my phone number. And people are like, you give out your number? You give your number to people? I'm like, yeah, I freely give it out. I say, for one, I'm going to pay my bills, so I don't have to worry about, bill collectors or anybody's calling. And number two, I don't have to answer. Like, I don't have to answer in the moment. And I don't put that pressure on myself to say that phone is ringing, somebody needs to check in, and you need to answer. I've taken
mhm.
that pressure off of me to say that I am setting that boundary, that when I can get to that person, I will get to them. I'm not dropping what I'm doing. I'm not stopping what I'm doing in this moment, but I'm going to acknowledge them to let them know that, hey, I got your message. I give myself a quick turnaround within like 24 to 48 hours. Make sure that you respond. Be mindful of that, because I don't want anybody to feel like I'm ignoring them. But however, I've set those boundaries because the truth of the matter, my mission is to make sure that people are thriving. So
Right.
I know that that's a weight that I carry, but it's a good weight. It feels good. But I know that I can't do this work without setting boundaries. So I was very intentional about making sure that doing this work, when I stepped into doing this work and I accepted this calling to say, you know what, I started a company called A Human Being. It's A Human, period, being, explanation point. So it's like everybody's a human. So I want to respect everybody as such. But what I realize is that everybody is being whoever they are called to be. You're being, and if you don't know how to be that thing, or you don't know how to walk in that thing, I want to be the person to help you achieve that. So
Mhm.
I know that taking on that load was going to require me. It's an easy burnout, right? It's an easy burnout. If I can take on the load and be responsible for all of these people, Steve, I tell you, I have over 1,000 contacts within my phone.
Ah,
From people that say like, hey, just a quick check-in, just a quick check-in, and I know it's a quick burnout, but I realized that if I would not have set those boundaries, I would burn out. But it's important to be able to say, hey, set those boundaries, check in, when you can, and then also have a group of people around you that when you pour out so much that they'll be able to pour back into you.
yeah, I think that's just something everyone needs to hear and then
Mm-hmm.
hear it again and probably one or two more times to
Yep.
let it sink in. And then start thinking, how do I create these boundaries?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not also just boundaries around things that might be related to mental health or
Mm-hmm.
things going on in your life. It could also be, I have friends that sort of in the entrepreneur space. And one of the things that we talk about is the people that are always calling with can I pick your brain for just a minute? Do you mind if I pick your brain? I'd like to pick your brain.
Yes.
And
Uh-huh.
it's like, well, it doesn't sound that great, like
Yeah.
picking at a brain to start with, but they always want something, and I think it's better just to be direct. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you want? Like when
Yeah.
you're asking for something from someone in any of these circumstances, you probably shouldn't beat around the bush with it. You should be very direct, and I think that's a part of your boundary setting too. I
Absolutely.
only have so much time every day, and I just remember the point in my life where I had to really start reevaluating, like grabbing coffees with people to have my brain picked, because it started consuming a large part of every day and it becomes really tricky. And so giving advice to students and trying to help young alumni and other people think about their path forward. Their journey is just kind of on the front end, and
Mm-hmm.
they want to find every advantage possible, to get ahead. Everything you're talking about, I think, fuels those advantages, right? Thinking
Absolutely.
about this early. How do I create the boundaries? How do I ask the questions directly? How do I actually put myself in a position to help people back? That's all things that I think are part of this success recipe for life, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And people need to hear that more. But I do appreciate very much what you say about boundaries, because I do think there's just a lot of people, even in the classroom, faculty members, sometimes I think they struggle with that a little bit. What is their role? Am I to teach or do research, or am I supposed to be listening to people talk about what's happening, outside of the classroom?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like creating the boundary, making it clear, this is what I'm willing to do. And if it goes beyond this, there are professionals on campus or other places that can take the baton and keep it going down a path that's going to help you. And I just think that's really important. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah,
That's really
absolutely.
good.
I share with the adults, working adults. I tell them all the time, and I said employers may not be happy when I say this, but I'm like, use your PTO. I'm like, there's no reward for you not using it. Like
Right.
you're not identified as a superhero that's coming in burnt out, not taking the time off when you need to refuel. And I really want to encourage employers too to like I'm not saying throw a party, but celebrate those individuals. Like, why do I have to call out because I'm not feeling it today? Can I just call out today because I am feeling it and I want to enjoy the beautiful sunshine? And there's no repercussions for using my PTO to do that. And I feel like when people really start to value people in the workplace, or when we really start to value the people within our life and give them the autonomy to freely live their life without setting any restraints on them and having these high expectations that whenever I call you, you must be there to answer, or
Mhm.
whenever I need something from you, you must be there. When we take that away from people, I really feel that we have a whole human when we do that.
Mhm.
Like, and when I'm talking whole, I'm talking about like spiritually whole and connected. And and I think that you can better, I'm going to say this word, but this is not the right word. You can better use a person, or you can gain more from them when they are whole, instead of continuing to pull from them, and they're drained and they're burnt out. So I think it's important that we give people the space to be people and to be human and to feel what they feel, to express what they feel, to enjoy life, and to really just be themselves, versus always having this expectation from them that it has to be like this, or it has to be like this, or you have to do it like this, because we now don't have a whole human who's being their authentic self. We have a robot.
Yeah, there is a human element to it, and it does
Mm-hmm.
get missed. And I think in the employment environment, it oftentimes gets wrapped up in like, where are the lines that you should or shouldn't cross between the person's professional life and their
Mm-hmm.
personal life? Can those two things coexist and have a successful workplace? I think it can.
Absolutely.
I just think people are scared of that a little bit
Mm-hmm.
because it can get messy on both sides of the equation. And if both sides are messy one way or the other, it
Yeah.
just makes the work environment tricky. But I think I want to believe, maybe, I don't know if it's true or not, but I want to believe that that's getting better in a lot of ways. And maybe the pandemic, maybe that's one of the small silver linings in that, where I think people just became much more in tune to what's going on in people's lives, and
Yes.
people having to be disconnected and not capable of kind of coming into an office. I just think it created some space to reevaluate a lot of things. And on the other side of it, lots of things with the pandemic were very complicated and have created some ongoing complicated things for people. But I do think there's another part of it that gave people maybe a little grace in some ways to be able to reevaluate some things that are important to them and come to some consensus around some things going on in their lives.
Yeah.
So I don't want to take up too much of your time. I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours, because I think this is so
Uh,
healthy and good for people to hear about. I did notice, I jotted this down because I didn't want to miss it because I just loved it. But there was a quote I saw that you had, and it went something like this: every great achievement began as a simple idea nurtured by passion and perseverance. Do
yes.
you remember saying that quote or posting that
Absolutely.
quote somewhere?
Absolutely.
Um, I mean, I love that because, as you probably heard my story, you can kind of see it right behind me. I have my little thing, trust your crazy ideas.
Yes.
And I do think that everything, and I say this all the time when I'm talking about ideas generally, most ideas never get executed.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just start there. I mean, anybody can have an idea, but it takes something else, like you're saying, passion, perseverance, probably some luck involved. There's just a lot going on to make an idea become something that's incredible. But there's nothing that happens or exists that didn't start out with that, without being an idea first, and you can just follow it. And so I can just tell from everything that you're doing that you're certainly turning your ideas into something incredible that's making a huge difference for lots of people. So I just want to say thank you so much for doing that. And I'm so glad that NSCS has been a part of your life journey, because it was also at one point a crazy idea. I didn't know if it would really work. And it's great to see the amazing people like you who've come through that organization and continue to be a part of it as a lifetime member. So
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you taking some time to talk to me and give out some good scholarship.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And I think that when we talk about like those crazy ideas, I remember the first time that it happened for me. It was the first time that I spoke something that I wanted to do and I saw it come to life. And that changed my whole perspective of life. Just being able to, when you have an idea, to speak it and begin to do the work to make it happen. I was sitting in the dentist's office with my grandmother one day, and I was I think I was maybe like 22 or 23. And I had an idea to start a production company. And we actually are getting ready to celebrate our 19th anniversary this June. Um,
Awesome.
so
Congratulations. That was a
thank
good idea.
Right? It was a great idea, right? So I'm sitting in the dentist's office with my grandmother, and it was a magazine that was there, and it was a magazine that was very popular, like in Florida. I was born and raised in Florida. It was a popular magazine, and I said to her in the magazine, I said to her while I was looking at the magazine, I said, I want to be in this magazine one day. And being a grandmother, she's like, yeah, you sure will. You will. You will definitely be in that magazine. I'm like, no, I'm very serious. That was in October of 2006. In November of that month, I received a phone call, and the gentleman on the other end saying, like, hey, I can't remember his name, but it's in the article. He said, I am such and such from Lake Magazine. Are you Dwayne Wiggins? And I'm like, yes. He was like, someone wrote into us about the production company that you're starting here in this area. This is the first of its kind. This is the first thing that's happening within our city. And we want to feature you in Lake Magazine. I was like, oh my gosh. They came in November, did the interview, and I was in the February 2007 issue of Late magazine. And I
Wow.
carry that magazine. It's even here on my desk at in my office upstairs. I carry that magazine wherever I go because that was the first time that I spoke something out and it actually happened. And I realized that from that day, that has been my life's journey. Anything that I've wanted to do, I spoke it out and it has happened in time. And I always think about, saying that I wanted a degree and wanted to work with NSCS. There's one thing that hasn't happened with NSCS that I would love to happen one day.
Speak it out. Speak it out.
I'm going to speak it out. But it has always been my desire being able to work with Miss Holly, who I absolutely love, who was like my advisor when I was the president. I've always wanted to be, I don't know the particular job title, but I've always wanted to be one of like the district advisors that cover the schools. And because I've always felt like being a huge advocate for NSCS and what it has done for me, I've always wanted to be able to pour that back into other colleges as well and other young people. So when I've had the opportunity, like Ms. Holly has invited me to come back and speak and be the keynote for a couple of induction ceremonies, that has been so rewarding to me because I'm very passionate about NSCS and just what it's done for me. It was like the first, I feel like I've always been a leader, but this is where my leadership skills were really cultivated because somebody saw something that I didn't. So I was able to lead our school. I was able to lead on a national level. So from that moment, I've just been in opportunities and spaces where I am leading people. And so even starting my own company, A Human Being, and writing the book and presenting at these different conferences, that boost being at the conference in 2019 was the boost that I needed to be able to say, like, looking at all the different presenters, that's where I got that urge to say, like, I want to do that, So being there really put something inside of me to say, I can do that. I want to do that. I want to be able to present. I want to be able to share my experiences and give people the tools to be able to do, to get through things. So that's where that push came from by attending that conference in 2019.
Well, a lot of times, I say this to students and other people all the time, you have to really show up and be present at things to see where that presence can manifest itself into making things happen, right? So I'm so glad that you came to be a part of that conference. I know you mentioned earlier that was just before the pandemic, and finally in 2026, we're going to be getting back to having an in-person meeting again for NSCS. So I'll keep you posted on that. And I will also make sure to pass along any opportunities to work with us when those materialize over time. You never know where it might interject with your professional journey, but I'm so happy to know that that's the type of thing that you would love to do. And it's great to just hear the ways that NSCS has been positive for you. So thank you so much for spending some time here, and we'll have to do this again sometime soon.
Absolutely. I would love to.